All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling a really fundamental question in finance, one that you'll definitely see in your CA financial management studies. How do you figure out what a company's share is actually worth? To do that, we're going to master a powerful tool called Gordon's growth model. So let's get to it.
So, I want you to picture this. You're a financial advisor. A client comes to you and they ask a question that sounds simple but is actually incredibly deep. What is this share really worth? And we're not just talking about the price flashing on a screen, right? We're talking about its deep, true, intrinsic value. And to find that, you need the right set of tools in your toolkit.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off by looking at this valuation puzzle. Then, we'll get to know our main tool, the Gordon growth model. After that, we'll roll up our sleeves and apply it to a real case study. And to wrap it all up, we'll talk about the big strategic decisions behind the numbers and, most importantly, how to sidestep those common traps in your exams.
Okay, let's get into our primary tool for cracking this valuation code, the Gordon growth model. Honestly, you can think of it as the Swiss Army knife for valuing any company that pays out dividends. It's that useful. At its heart, the model is actually beautifully simple. What it does is it helps us figure out a stock's value today. And it does this based on one single, really big assumption, that the company's dividends are going to grow at a steady, constant rate forever. Yeah, you heard that right, forever.
And this is the engine right here. Don't let the letters scare you. It's pretty straightforward. P0 is the price we're trying to find today. To get it, you take D1, and this is crucial. It's next year's expected dividend, and you divide it by the difference between K and G. K is just the cost of equity, basically the minimum return investors demand. And G is that constant growth rate we just talked about.
Now, what's really cool is we can tweak this core formula to get another super useful metric, the price to earnings, or PE ratio. By just reframing dividends and growth in terms of earnings and retention, we can derive this PE formula directly. And trust me, understanding this link is an absolute game changer for so many exam questions.
All right, enough theory. Theory's great, but let's get our hands dirty and see how this thing works in the real world. We're going to put our new tool to the test and solve a classic exam-style problem for a company called Y Limited.
So here are the vital stats for our case study. First up, the company's return on its retained earnings, which we call R, is a healthy 25%. It holds on to 60% of its profits, that's our B, and its investors, well, they're demanding a 20% return, which is our KE. Okay, let's put these numbers to work. And here's our first mission. The company wants to boost its PE ratio up to 12. So our job is to figure out exactly what retention ratio they need to hit to justify that higher valuation in the eyes of the market.
All right, time to grab that PE formula we looked at earlier. We're just going to plug in the numbers we know. We have our target PE of 12, our KE of 0.20, and our R of 0.25. The only thing left that we don't know is B. From here, it's just a little bit of algebra to get B all by itself. And boom, there's our answer, 70%. So what does this actually mean? It's simple. To get that higher PE ratio, Y Limited needs to retain more of its profits, bumping that ratio up from 60% to 70%. This makes perfect sense because more retained cash fuels higher growth, and investors will pay a premium for that growth, especially when the company's 25% return is higher than the 20% investors require.
Awesome. Now, let's move on to part 2 of our mission. Based on this new, more aggressive 70% retention policy, what can we expect the share price to look like 1 year from now?
Let's walk through how we get there. First, we need the new price for today, our P0. That's just our target PE of 12 times the earnings of 10 rupees, which gives us 120 rupees. Next, we calculate the new growth rate, G, using our new 70% retention ratio. Finally, we just apply that growth rate to today's price, and that gives us next year's price.
And there you have it, 141 rupees. Think about that for a second. That simple strategic shift in their retention policy is expected to boost the share price by 21 rupees in just 1 year. That is value creation in action.
Okay, one last scenario to really lock this in. Let's throw in a curveball. The market conditions have changed a bit, and investors are now only demanding a return, or K, of 17.5%. With this new, lower expectation, what retention ratio would the company need to hit a PE of 10?
You know the drill by now. It's the exact same process, but we're just plugging in our new numbers. Our target PE is now 10, and the really crucial change is that K is now 0.175.
We substitute those in, and we solve for B one last time. 50%. Now this is really fascinating. Because investors now require a lower return, the company can actually achieve a solid PE of 10 while retaining less of its earnings. It gives them so much more flexibility. They can even afford to pay out more of their profits as dividends.
So all of these numbers and calculations bring us beyond the formulas to the real core strategic decision that every single manager has to face. Should we keep the profits to grow the business, or should we pay them out to our shareholders?
Okay, this slide right here is the golden rule of retention. It all comes down to a simple comparison between R, the return the company makes on its investments, and K, the return investors could get somewhere else. In our case, YLT's R of 25% is greater than the 20% K. That means every single rupee they keep is creating value. If it was the other way around, they should give that cash back to shareholders, period.
And finally, let's switch gears and talk exam strategy. When you're in that exam hall, you have to be sharp. So let's go over the common traps that can steal precious marks from you if you're not paying attention.
So listen up, because this is important. First, don't mix up the retention ratio, B, with the payout ratio, which is just 1 minus B. It's a classic mistake. Second, always use next year's dividend, D1, not today's. Next, a simple one, but it happens. Convert in percentages to decimals. And crucially, don't just write down a final number and move on. You have to explain why your answer makes sense. Show the examiner you understand the logic.
And here it is, a quick summary of all the key formulas we've covered today. Think of this as your personal cheat sheet. It connects everything from the basic valuation formula all the way to that strategic golden rule of comparing R and K. This is definitely a good one to save for your revision.
And I want you to remember, this is about so much more than just exam prep. When you truly get this model, you understand the fundamental logic of corporate finance. You see how the decisions a company makes can either create incredible value for shareholders or completely destroy it.
So, we're right back where we started. But now, you have the tools. You understand the formulas, you get the strategy, and you know the pitfalls to avoid. So the next time that client asks you what their company's really worth, you'll be more than ready to give them an answer.